Do people in the military ever confess to crimes that they didn't actually commit?
You'd be surprised at what service members say and what they actually will confess to. I was working on a case for a soldier just a few years back, and he confessed to some pretty horrific crimes of sexual assault and rape. Everyone wrote him off, the command, law enforcement. Heck, his military attorney thought he was guilty. We came in and investigated the case. We really poured through that interrogation, and we realized that after 15 hours of interrogation, after looking at the DNA evidence, the facts and the forensic evidence completely contradicted this service member's confession. And one of two things would have had to be true. Either the forensic evidence was lying, and we all know that forensic evidence doesn't lie, or this was a false confession. That's when it really hit me in the face that service members will and do confess to things that they didn't do or to crimes they didn't commit. Since that time, I've dedicated a certain portion of my practice to defending service members who have confessed to crimes they didn't commit. It's something I'm passionate about. It's something I study very aggressively. It's something that I've spent a tremendous amount of time in. And if a service member calls my office and says they've confessed to a crime and it's a false confession, that's a case I really want to take on. Because I don't believe that most lawyers understand what it's like and the gravity of trying to figure out what happened in that interrogation room. How did that individual who walked in at 9 in the morning, an innocent man, walk out at 10 o'clock at night, signing his life away? And more importantly, how do you convey that story and teach and educate a jury that these false confessions can happen? Because believe me, they do.
Looking through your work, I see that you deal with a lot of cases with DNA evidence. So do you particularly enjoy working on projects that involve forensic evidence?
The old saying is that people lie, but evidence doesn't. One of my favorite types of cases to take on are those that involve DNA and forensic evidence. I love doing DNA cases. I think DNA really tells a story. You can hear what a witness says, you can hear what CID says, you can often hear what your client says. But when you really dig into the forensic evidence, the DNA, whether it's autosomal DNA, mitochondrial DNA, YSTR DNA, when you're looking at a crime scene, the evidence tells a story. And when you can piece together the story through the forensic evidence, that's where the truth comes out.
If a service member has already made a statement to law enforcement or consented to a search, is that something you can get suppressed?
A statement to law enforcement, or if a search was done, it can be suppressed by the military judge. It's just going to depend on the facts and circumstances of the case. Every case is unique. The important part is filing the motion, getting it before the judge, and litigating the issue, because if you've confessed to a crime, if you've made a statement, if there's been DNA evidence or something else has been taken or seized, there's always the possibility that we can get that suppressed. If we get it suppressed, that can materially alter the outcome of the trial, and it can be a complete game changer. But the important part is when you're filing motions is to see how that plays into the trial strategy. Oftentimes you don't want to file motions that give away too much of the trial strategy, but you want to do whatever it takes that's going to set you up for success at trial.
Is it true that in the military it's actually a crime to have sex with someone if they've been drinking?
In the military, it's a crime to have sex with someone that cannot consent. But the reality is you can drink and consent. You can have 1 drink, you can have 2 drinks, you might even be able to have 10 drinks and consent, because alcohol affects everyone differently. The problem is with the new military culture and the war on sexual assault, they're actually teaching young service members in briefings across the world that if you have 1 drink, you can't consent. And that's absolutely incorrect. It's just patently untrue. But the problem we have is that permeates the military system. The commanders believe it. The judge advocates believe this. And probably the most scary part is the juries initially believe this. So the key to that is changing a jury's mind. When you go into a court-martial and you voir dire or you question the jury members, to make sure you educate them that that's not the fact, that's not the state of the law. And it's going into a trial and educating them and showing that someone can have alcohol and they can consent, and that 1 drink does not equal no consent. It's a complete myth.
Are there members of the military that would actually falsely accuse another service member of a crime?
I think there are people all around the world that would falsely accuse someone of a crime, and the reality is the military is just a microcosm of society. I believe it happens more often in the military than otherwise, because in today's culture and today's war against sexual assault, the unfortunate reality is that The military incentivizes individuals to make false allegations. How does that occur? In the world of sexual assault, if you are an alleged victim, you can get an expedited transfer to a base of your own choosing. You can get an honorable discharge and get out of the military if you don't want to get out of the military. You can get MTRS, which is what's called military rape trauma syndrome, which is a way for alleged victims to get financial compensation if they are an alleged victim. And there is a host of motivators, everything from those that I just mentioned, to someone getting caught cheating on their spouse, to someone committing a crime and wanting to blame someone else, someone that wants to cause an alibi. So I really do believe that while it's sad, that deep down people will falsely accuse someone. Now the key there is to uncover that, find out the motivation, because in any trial, whether it's a sexual assault trial, whether it's a drug trafficking trial where a snitch is involved, if you don't answer the why, because the jury wants to know why someone would falsely accuse someone of something they didn't do. If your attorney can't get to the why, then the reality is that service member is probably going to jail.